What happens when bold color, fabric paint, the most incredible stitching by hand and machine, and a little humor all collide? You get the work of Tania Tanti. In this episode of Quilter on Fire, we talk about abstract landscapes, playful portraits, and the inspiration behind Tania's what if energy. Today, I'll have a chat with Tania Tanti. Hello and welcome to the Quilter on Fire podcast. I'm Brandy Maslowski, a former firefighter turned quilt professional. As a quilt teacher, speaker, and judge, I travel the globe to bring quilters more joy and less overwhelm. Not too long ago, the quilty life I now lead was just a dream. After many lessons and a lot of hard work, I've transitioned from juggling a day job and a quilting business on the side to becoming a full-time quiltpreneur. I started the Quilter on Fire podcast to create a vibrant community of quilters, artists, and makers. Each episode brings you inspiring stories, insights, and the pure joy of guests from all over the world. If their stories uplift you and spark joy, you're in the right place. Let's dive in and ignite that creative fire within you. My guest today is Tania Tanti, a Melbourne-based art quilter who loves screen-printed fabric paint and embroidery thread. She uses painting and stitch to create bold, expressive art pieces. Her work often lands somewhere between abstract landscapes and portraiture, usually with strong color, lots of contrast, compelling messaging that opens up the conversation, and more than a hint of humor. It's spontaneous, layered, and full of energy, and it shows in her award-winning work. So let's explore the story of Tania Tanti. Tania, welcome to the show.
Hi, Brandy. Thanks for having me.
I'm so happy to have you here all the way from Australia. Welcome, welcome.
It's great to be here.
Okay, so I love to start by taking a little look back at where you got started. So when do you first remember putting stitch to fabric?
Oh, look, I put stitch to fabric way back when I had my first child, well, to a quilt. Prior to that, I tried to make some clothes, but with little success.
Yeah, it's always like I'm trying to make some garments right now, just getting ready for QuiltCon. We're recording this before the air date, of course. And oh my goodness, people are going to see my struggles on YouTube for sure.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I still try, but it still doesn't work.
Yeah. So early on when you were having your first child, you started dabbling with quilting. So tell us the story of your first quilt.
Okay, so I thought our son, he was moving into a single bed because actually I was pregnant with our second. And my mum and my sister, who have been quilters for years, said, Tania, you've got to make Oliver a quilt. And I was like, oh, okay, all right. Oh, where do I start? So I went along and we went fabric shopping and I got all confused about, how much fabric to get. And they're just like, why do you care? You've got to build up a stash. And I'm like, well, what do I need a stash for? And everybody just looked at me crazy. And yeah, we went from there. It had trains and cars and all things that moved on it.
So can you tell us a little bit about your creative path? Did you have someone who was inspirational in your youth or throughout your school years that really got you into creative making?
Well, I've always been creative. I'm not sure if I don't know, I just kept going there. And so I did do a lot of creating, and I don't know if there's anyone in particular. I mean, my mum and sister sewed, but there wasn't anyone really crazy creative in my small town besides my group of friends at school, really.
Yeah.
And I just started to explore in the art room and went from there. And I just fell in love with creating, really.
So when you made that first quilt for your son, was it already totally diving into artfulness, or was it more of a traditional quilt?
It was way more traditional.
Uh-huh.
I didn't think of quilting as arty at all. It just didn't gel that way for me at the time.
Yeah, so it was fun, like a traditional quilt for a little child, right? A baby quilt.
Yes.
Okay, so did you make a transition from like education, career, something else before quilting, or are you still balancing both?
Yeah. So I went off and I studied fine art with the intent to major in photography. I actually wanted to go to photography school, but it was really expensive and just out of my league. So I headed off to a regional country university and studied fine art and fell in love with printmaking and photography still. I had my career was in photography, but I didn't quite finish studying fine art. I headed off and I got a cadetship at a newspaper as a photographer. So I
Oh.
went from there and then I created my own photography business.
Yeah, so when you started getting into quilting, was there a moment when you kind of realized, oh my gosh, this has like bitten me like a bug. This is my thing.
Yeah, I think slowly I was really enjoying just the whole process, and I made a few quilts in those years, but more traditional. Every now and again, you do your own take on it. I'm not really good at following rules and instructions. um, and I started to see other things, but I knew it was bigger than that, and in 2018, I spotted a competition in a Spotlight catalogue. Spotlight is like a Joanne's in Australia,
Okay.
and it was to win a trip to Houston to the quilt
Mm,
show.
wow.
And I just had this burning desire just to go and, see the big wide world of quilting. And so I put all my tools together and made a quilt for that and I won it and headed off to Houston.
Wow. Oh my goodness. So you won the whole thing. So what kind of quilt was that? Was it from a pattern or was it an original design or what did you come
Yeah,
up with?
it was an original design. So it was just a big, solid colors, a real play, just with shape. And yeah, it won. And it was the only way I could see myself getting overseas at the time. And I just knew I wanted to go. And once I went to Houston, I never looked back. The whole world opened up and I came back with a suitcase full of fabric paint.
Oh, wow. Well, that's a huge milestone. So, okay, I feel like we've missed a little part of the story because you made a baby quilt, you dabbled in it, and then all of a sudden you're winning a prize and going to the US. So, what was how did you grow and change with your quilting style over time to become so artful?
I've really sort of gone from traditional to that quilt.
Yeah.
But in between, I did painting.
Mhm.
And so I painted some family portraits and abstract. When you look at them now, you can see the quilting in them.
Yeah.
But at the time, wasn't bending that way to the quilting.
Yeah.
And I guess it's brewing, like you're learning techniques, you're learning all these techniques, you're watching how people are doing things. So it's always brewing in the background of how things are put together. And I think because I had such a traditional grounding with quilting and a lot of traditional quilters around me, it just took me a little while to figure out that I could break away from that, break the rules a little bit.
Yeah.
So it was a bit of a transition in really learning that you can break the rules. It's okay, you
Yeah.
know.
And I can hear that burning desire in your story when you came
Yeah.
back from Houston for the first time with just a suitcase full of fabric. And so what do you think at that time your sort of intention was like, okay, this is going to be my thing forever now?
Well, I saw Helen Godden had a quilt there, and at that time it was a portrait. It was a couched portrait, but I had heard of Helen Godden, and then I started looking into her and how much she'd painted her quilts, that sort of thing. I booked in to do a fabric painting, or it was fabric stamping, and I ended up painting in the class and not doing what she told me to, but I really loved it. And I just could see, hang on, I've got to paint.
Yeah.
So I just sort of And then, of course, there was a Sakwa exhibition. There was other quilting around, all sorts of styles, and I love all kinds of quilting. And I just could see how much fun and play you could have with it. And I think inside I was just ready. I was just ready to create and
Yeah.
just a little bit more time to free up as the kids were getting older.
Yeah.
Running your business, it absorbs most of your time. So I could just start to see a little bit of balance, that I could get a bit more time in creating.
Yeah. It sounds like your moment was arriving, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's take a moment out of the story now and talk about where are you living now and who are your loved ones that you share your world with every day?
Okay. Well, I live in Melbourne, in Victoria, Australia, and I share the house with my husband and two boys. They're older now; they're just in their 20s, and we share a studio space, all of us. But during the day, every day I share the studio space with my husband. So we're these a lot.
Yeah, I bet. Oh, that's great. Well, I've been there. I love it. And my son was there for 6 months in 2024. So I was really excited to be able to visit the Australasian Quilt Convention when I went there that
Yeah.
year.
Yep.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about design, because you create everything original from your mind, from your heart, from the things that inspire you. So
Yep.
when an idea comes to you, how do you capture that? Do you go pencil to paper or photography back to your roots, or do you just start throwing fabric on the wall?
All of it, probably. But probably my biggest one is color. So just getting a blank piece of fabric
Yeah.
and just the color that you're drawn to that day, and just starting. Perhaps it is a beginning of an idea. Sometimes I do sketch, but I very quickly deviate from the sketch because I don't know if I get bored too quickly, or I don't want to know where it's going to go. I don't want a good plan. But when I'm halfway through painting, I often say to my husband, I really should plan these things out more. But I don't want to, because it is really nice to see where you go. I don't know. It's a discovery every time.
Yeah, totally makes sense. And
Mm.
so let's just walk through the process of one of your quilts, because when I look at the quilts in your gallery as a photograph, not seeing them on the wall in person, I think, oh my gosh, that is some ridiculous, meticulous piecing of what is that, right? And so give us a snippet of your process.
Okay, so I've got a couple of different ways. So I do improv piece, and I also do paint whole cloth. So they work differently, and it's nice to get a little change in between sometimes. But generally, I get the whole cloths and just do all the painting first, and then head on to the stitching, and it just adds a whole new layer of texture, color, shapes within it. So it's a fairly simplistic, I guess, painting, and then you add all the intricacies into it.
It doesn't seem very simplistic. I could imagine that you would think it's simplistic because you have to add all that beautiful stitch, but when the average person looks at it, they might be thinking, wow, that's not simplistic. That's incredible. And so I want to talk a little bit more, because you have a few different styles. Some of your works almost look like paper collage like. Is that
Yes.
one that would be more of an improv one, or is that painted as well?
No, definitely they're the improv ones. So the characters, most of my characters are in the improv area, and they are just, very carefully. Some of them are more simple in how much fabric I've used, but ones like the Quilter's Workout is just a whole mishmash of piecing all over the place, and just, quite engineered to get it together.
Yeah. Oh, they're so fun to look at. I can't wait to just tell everyone where to go and take a look at them all. But I don't want to leave this conversation without talking a little bit more about some of the tools you use and color. So let's talk about tools first. You love to paint on whole cloth fabric, but you don't just use acrylic paint with a fabric medium. What do you use?
I use two Australian brand fabric paints. One's Permaset screen printing fabric paint, which you can get overseas,
Yeah.
and the other is Texacraft. I do use the screen printing fabric paint. I just love the way it goes on the fabric. It is my favourite.
Yeah.
The Texacraft is a bit more fluid, so it is a bit more flowy. Sometimes I mix them together, but some of the colours you just can't get with Texacraft, but you can get with Permaset. So I do like to combine the two.
Yeah. And also your stitching, I have to say, you love a mix of hand and machine and everything.
Yeah.
So what are some of the favorite threads you use? Do you use different weights? Tell me.
Yeah. So I had started doing a little bit of hand stitching, and then I became an aurifil artisan last year. I'm not now, but I bought a bucket load of aurifil because I hadn't used aurifil before I became an aurifil artisan. My sister always used to tell me to use it, and I'm like, oh, I'll just use this stuff that I've got. But as soon as I started using it, I was like, oh, you were right. I should have been using this. So I bought all the different weights, and I love the 12 weight to hand stitch with particularly.
Mm-hmm.
But that really set me on a path to doing a lot more hand stitching in the quilting.
Yeah.
And I really am loving that. I tried not to hand stitch. I kept thinking, no, it'll take too long. I do the machine, do the hand, it'll take too long. And I resisted for years. And now I'm kicking myself because I'm thinking, why did I resist for so long?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's got such a beautiful result. And I just want to talk about one more design element before we move on to the next part of the conversation. If we take recovery, for example, when you created that before painting, like, do you sketch it out on the fabric or on a piece of paper, or do you do something digital before it gets to the fabric and you start painting?
No. Recovery started with there's 3 curves in that. And they look a bit breast-like, and that's where it began. That's what that was what it was about. So that's where it began, and then it grew from there.
Yeah. So it's just like an organic growth, and you just create as you go.
Yep.
Love it. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about inspiration. So where do you go for inspiration? Do you look out into the world, to issues, or is it more from within?
I would say most of it is from within. I'm a bit careful. I love looking at people's work, but you do want your work to have your signature on it.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where I love seeing other people's work. It is very inspiring, and I love, go to a gallery, that sort of thing. But I do it in snippets because I don't know. I just want to concentrate on my own world and developing me and my style and seeing where I'm going to go, I guess.
Yeah.
So, generally I try to just develop on top of what I've started.
Yeah, sounds like a great idea. Okay, so let's talk a bit about sort of the business of quilting. So what do you bring to the world with your business in a nutshell?
Wow. I've just started teaching, but really, I think I'm really more mainly a practicing artist who, generally I sell my own pieces, and I do get to sell them every now and again.
Yeah.
And with the teaching, I started teaching at AQC last year, which is the Australian Quilt Convention.
Yeah.
And I was a bit stressed and thinking, but I've started to relax a little bit more into it, and I have said yes to a few other places now. And I guess it's just sharing your own way that you approach your painting and your quilting. And I think it's really just letting others know it's okay. You can do this, if they feel like they're breaking rules by doing certain things, or, if you're doing a line of quilting and then you're doing a line on top of it, it sort of feels a bit naughty when you first do it.
Yeah. So true.
So I think it's really nice to actually just let people have a play and just find their own way with it.
Yeah, love it. Okay, so let's talk a bit about your website. What is your website and what can we find there?
Okay, so my website is a fairly simple reflection, just talks about what I do and also just shows my gallery of work. And I do have some pieces on there that are for sale. I've got some small pieces that I quilted. I took them off to some shows, and now my husband has put them in some frames, and they just come up beautifully. So I try to sell some of those, and it just shows my journey really.
So the website is taniatanti.com.au, and people can go there and check out everything you've been working on and find links to your Instagram and different places like that. So that is wonderful. So you love to also put your stuff in shows, your work in shows. So what was your very first fine art quilt on display?
My first one that was on display, my first quilt, I hadn't heard of QuiltCon.
Yeah.
And Libs Elliott came out, and I joined the Melbourne Modern Quilters.
Yeah.
And so I did a workshop with her.
Yeah.
And I picked out some colours, and I was really happy about putting this piece together. And I extended from the lesson and made a quilt, and someone said, "Oh, you should put that into QuiltCon." And I'm like, "Oh, what's QuiltCon?" Which I know it sounds terrible. And anyway, it got in.
Oh,
so
great.
that was my first quilt that actually went into a show. But my first quilt that went into a gallery was the Wandering Stitcher, one of my characters that I create.
Oh, nice. And have you ever had a show that was kind of like your own solo exhibition or anything like that?
Yeah, actually, sorry, I should, yes. So what happened was I hadn't even finished making my first art quilt.
Yeah.
And this was in getting to the end of 2019. I was worn out. I was run ragged with all the photography. I was doing a lot of stuff and was needing a break, and really I had this real yearning to just be creating and painting. So my husband and I, we had a chat, and I cut down a lot of what I was doing. And we decided that in 2020 I would slow down. And of course, we all know what happened in 2020. So in the end, I closed the business, and I if I'm closing the business and I'm fully going to immerse myself in this, I rang my local gallery and I said, I want to have an exhibition. And the lady who was operating it was a quilter. Mm. And she said, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I want to do art quilts and frame them and exhibit them. And she goes, sure. When do you want to do that? And it was just so exciting.
Yeah.
So I booked it in. I had 12 months and booked it in. And that was, just dived right in.
Yeah, talk about inspiring. You actually lit a fire under your own butt, right?
Yeah. And you just have that vision. Like I don't know, I think when you know you can do it, you just do it.
Yeah, and that leads us right into a favorite quote that you love. So tell me what that is and why.
You've got to go through the shit to get to the other side.
You do sometimes, yeah.
I think every now and again you'll get a quilt that just flows all the way through. Mm-hmm. But often you'll get a piece and, because it takes so many hours, you're working on it, and you just, first of all, you love it, and then it just gets a bit ugly.
Yeah.
And you're just thinking, oh, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. I don't know, all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Well, that's when a lot of us can stop and, put it in the UFO drawer and maybe never see it again.
Yeah.
But I have found that you have to push yourself and you just get it. You just keep going.
Yeah.
And you just get through that middle part, and then you start coming out the other end and, you're accomplishing something, you're going to finish something and just get into the other side. It's a real achievement. Yeah,
that's such really good advice for people. Just put your head down and keep going. You never know. It might turn out wonderful, right?
Yep.
Such good advice. Okay, let's talk a little bit about a collaboration you did with Irene Roderick. First of all, what was the event? How did it come about? And what did you do?
Okay, so the event was, it's called In Conversation, and it was an exhibition that Tara Glastonbury put together. And there were about half a dozen Australian quilters that were asked to pick a quilter of their choice to have a conversation with so that the two quilts could talk to each other. And of course, Irene sprung to mind for me because she was a great inspiration. In 2020, I did the Dancing with the Wall improv class with her. And the same thing, I was ready to throw fabric on the wall, but she gave me permission. It just felt like someone needed to say, yes, you can do that. And off I went with that. So she came to mind, and I was very nervous asking her, but she said yes. And very quickly we came up with, well, we're going to have characters, and we're going to be meeting at a quilt show and just going up for a big hug. It's going to be nice to see you again. And so that's what we created. And they came together so fast. I just think that because we just seemed to have a really good idea, and Irene had been in Australia, she'd been teaching here, and we had mucked around and done a bit of fabric painting and screen printing while she was here. And so we cut the fabric in half each. We gave each other half of each thing we'd done, and we took them back and incorporated them into the quilts as well.
Oh, so much fun. And then you went one step further with a little bit of animation. So tell me about that.
Yeah. So I started doing a couple of small animations. I've got an artist friend of mine, Emma Thorpe, and she said, Tania, you've got to turn your quilts into animations. You know, people are going to love them. And because I have the photography background, and I thought, oh, all right, okay, I'll give it a go. So the first time it took me forever. And look, they do take time. I'd love to do loads more. And I started off doing one. And then, of course, when Irene and I put these quilts together, I could just see it. And I thought, oh, yeah, let's go run amok in the gallery, you know, at night time when all the little characters come out to play and they run around the gallery and check out everything. So I thought that's what I would do. So that's what we do. We run around, we hug because we're meeting each other, and yeah, we try and jump into each other's artworks.
Yeah, it's so fun. I was watching it earlier today and I just thought, oh, what are these characters doing? It looks like they're so joyful, like they're meeting each other for the first time and they're switching places and trying to fit in each other's quilts. It was absolutely adorable. And it just seemed like a friendship waiting to happen, right?
Yeah.
So that's a lot of fun. Okay, talk a little bit about some of your favorite quilt travels. Where have you been?
Oh, gosh, favourite quilt travels. Well, Houston, of course. I went to Houston in 2018, and then I got to go back there with my mum and my sister. That was in 2023. And then soon after, I've hardly travelled, and then all of a sudden I'm like, I want to go to QuiltCon. So I went to Raleigh in 2024. And, I just absolutely loved that. And it was, I want to get back to QuiltCon. It's such a great atmosphere. And then recently returned in September last year, went to France and exhibited at the CAFOR, the European Patchwork Convention, or whatever it is, get together. And that was such an amazing experience. It was incredible.
Yeah, and that one was sponsored by Handy Quilter. So how did that come about?
Yeah, so thankfully Handy Quilter spotted my work and said, oh, look, we'd love to sponsor you for the show there. There's a few sponsors that sponsor the exhibitors. So thankfully that was wonderful. I was so pleased about it. Yeah, so it just helped because obviously taking an exhibition overseas is very expensive.
Yeah. Well, fun. What a milestone for sure. Okay. And you mentioned earlier in the podcast that you've started teaching. So you have some teaching coming up at AQC. So what will you be teaching there?
Okay, so I started a different quilt. So it's really, I'm doing a painting class one day and then the free motion the next day. And it's really just about making those nice thick lines on your quilting and just different ways that I go about doing the free motion. And the same with the paint. It's just the way how you apply it, because everybody can apply their paint and their mediums can be a little bit different. So it's just about how to use them.
Yeah, so great. And if anyone's listening right now and they're hearing me say AQC, that's the Australasian Quilt Convention, right, in Melbourne.
Yep.
And so that is a really fun event. I went to it in 2024, and I'm telling you, it's got a little bit of extra pomp and circumstance. If you're ever thinking of going to it, they bring the teachers up on stage, which they call the tutors, and they dance around on the stage. They get everyone just up and running. There's a big
Yeah.
event. We all had cowboy hats on that one year that I was there for that
Yep.
event. It was a lot of fun. They really enjoy themselves and they put on a good show. So if you're ever thinking of doing it, it's really worth it. It's a bit far away, of course, from Canada, but or from the USA if you live down there and you're listening. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. Okay,
Yeah.
so I wanted to say this because you are a bit choosy about when and where you teach. So why is that?
Well, because most of my time I want to spend creating. So I am very careful. I have run my own business before, so I know how all consuming that can be.
Yeah.
And it really doesn't leave a lot of time to do much else. You work such long hours and crazy hours all over the place. So
Yeah.
I'm a little careful in how much I do want to take on, because my goal, I do, creating is my passion, and I want to keep it that way, and I want to really focus on it.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
hearing you loud and clear because after the pandemic hit and things kind of felt like traveling was starting to happen again, year after year, I started ramping up and ramping up. And all of a sudden, I was traveling 2 to 3 weeks a month. And
Yeah.
so this year, I've dialed it all back. And I'm telling you, it just feels
Yeah.
so good to get up in the morning and be able to say, okay, what am I going to focus on today? You give yourself just that little bit of breathing space by being a little bit more picky about what you do. So now I'll do the week-long teaching things that are really, a little more lucrative or whatever. And it really works. So I'm hearing you loud and clear. Okay, so let's talk a bit about your lectures because you have a few coming up. So Sydney and Australia Guilds, you've been doing some lectures. Tell us about what you like to talk about.
Well, most people just want to hear about my journey. Here in Australia, I was just talking, I'm about to be the keynote speaker at the Australian Modern Quilt Show in Sydney, which is great. A lot of volunteers have come together to put together that show again. It's going to be fantastic.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, they really just want to hear about my journey because, I did do quilting, but traditional, and for quite some time. And really it is a time factor that then allows you to then go off and explore in other crazy ways. So for some people, they just sort of feel like, where did she come from?
Yeah.
But there was a lot of brewing in the background there going on. And just also, I think, playing between all the different mediums, between the precise piecing to the really arty, painterly quilts. I think people like to see all the ways you go about things. So mainly talking about that, really.
Yeah, that's so good. And is there a quilt or quilt project that's been most memorable for you along the way?
I think my most enduring quilt was the Naughty Corner quilt. And that comes back to that quote, you've got to go through the shit to get to the other side. I reckon I went through the shit about 3 times with that one.
Yeah.
So I did actually throw it in the corner. So I did a couple of things wrong. First of all, I was quilting it, but then I started painting the back because I love to paint a bit of the back.
Yeah.
But I happened to use this super coat screen printing fabric paint, which I didn't realize was sort of extra thick, and it stopped my flow of quilting and all the rest of it, and I couldn't figure it out. And I'd done a lot of quilting, and in the end I was cutting out bits from the back and putting it on again, and I threw it in the corner and just thought, no, I'll never get through it. I didn't think I was ever going to finish it. Yeah, but it took me a little while, but I did get there in the end. And that's the one that won the Master Artistry Award at Houston.
Oh,
so
great.
Yeah, it was worth it.
Yeah. Okay. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. So in your creative practice, what brings you joy?
What brings me joy? Early mornings, coffee, and deciding what to do.
Yeah.
I just love that I'm able to just choose to paint or to quilt.
Mm-hmm.
So both, I love both. And if I paint for too long, I want to quilt. If I quilt for too long, I want to paint. So I like being able to flow between the two.
Yeah. And before we were chatting, before we started this podcast interview, you mentioned to me a healing quilt called Recovery. Tell me about that one.
Yeah, so Recovery came about. I had been diagnosed with breast cancer in 2023, and exactly 2 years later, I got my second diagnosis of breast cancer, which was a bit of a shock because, you know, it was supposed to all be gone.
Yeah.
We hope it is.
Yeah.
And anyway, so I had to undergo, big surgery, and I just couldn't wait to get back home and just go back up into the studio. So, every day is different when you're recovering from a decent surgery.
Mm-hmm.
And so I painted my way back to wellness, and Recovery is my quilt, and I love it for many reasons, but I think a lot of people it uplifts them. They love it. So,
oh yeah.
And it uplifts me as well.
Yeah, yeah. And we have to just talk about it for a minute because it's just like you already mentioned that it has sort of three shapes that are kind of breast-like and that it grew organically from there. But, how did it help you in your healing journey as you were making it?
I think it helped me focus. So the first time I was diagnosed, I spent quite a bit I threw the covers over my head and was a bit shocked and spent some time hiding away. But the second time I knew I didn't want to go there, and quilting actually is what saved my mental health, I think, that time, and really helped me heal. And it is healthy for you. It is good for you to create. And that's exactly what it did for me. It kept me focused, and it made me happy doing it.
Yeah. And it makes me happy looking at it. But I want to talk about one just brilliant thing that stands out so clearly. And you have this wonderful use of color, wonderful grasp of color. Somehow it just explodes off of the screen that I'm looking at here. But even from a photograph, the thread is just extraordinary. So how do you choose thread that is going to either contrast or go with? And do you use multiple weights of thread? Tell me a bit more about how you've matched the paint with the thread.
Yeah, sometimes I can start and I can get to some tricky spots and try about 5 different colours before I decide, no, definitely this one. And I can be very sure and just start and then, no, I've got to change it. Yeah. So very fussily. And I do use single threads, and I do double thread my machine as well. And I use all sorts of weights. Probably up to the 28 weight of that Aurifil is probably the equivalent of some other thread I've got that's probably like a 40 weight. Mm-hmm. And I double thread it. Yeah, it really does vary. Yeah, but it's more about the colour than anything.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And it really looks like there are parts of it look like a bit of colorful anger and about a bit of colorful creation of life. And there's just so many little bits in there that every single person who looks at it is going to find, oh my gosh, that's a gorgeous silhouette of a woman. They're going to find things in there that are meaningful to them.
Yes.
So it's just, I really encourage you, if you're listening right now, to go to the website and check it out because it's just gorgeous. Okay, so right now we're going to go to a quick break. And then when we come back, we're going to talk all about Tania's studio, some of the incredible quilts, of course, some of the awards she's won, and what's coming soon. We'll be right back. Quilters, can we talk about that pile of unfinished quilts for a second? You know the ones. The tops are done, but they're just sitting there waiting to be quilted because you just weren't quite sure how to finish them. That's exactly why you're going to love the Move the Needle Machine Quilting Summit, created by Manon from Mom and Me Quilting Co. It's a free 3-day virtual event all about helping you finish your quilts with confidence using walking foot, ruler, and free motion quilting techniques, whether you quilt on a domestic or long arm. You'll learn from a lineup of incredible teachers, including me, talking about thread weight, length of stitch, and style of stitch. That's my topic, and I'm excited to be on the faculty of a summit all focused on making the quilting finish feel fun and achievable. So instead of letting those tops pile up, you'll feel ready to move them across the finish line. If that sounds like exactly what you need, registration opens April 29th. You can hop on the early bird list now at momandmequiltingco.com. Let's finish those quilts. Just give me 30 seconds of your time. 2 things I want to say. The first thing is a huge thank you for listening and tuning into the show week after week. It means the world to me and my team, which consists of James, my podcast producer, DG, my virtual assistant, and Luna, my chocolate lab. This podcast really is a dream that started with the notion of surrounding myself with people who lift me up, but it has turned into so much more than that. We absolutely couldn't have imagined becoming an award-winning podcast, but secondly, we feel like we're only just getting started. And if you enjoy what we do here, please go to your favorite social media, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, or even YouTube, and follow Quilter on Fire. It's one small thing you can do for free to support this show. And here's a promise I'm going to make to you. I'll do everything in my power to make this the best show I can, just for you. Thank you for listening. And we are back with Tania Tanti. Tania, can you tell us about your studio space?
Well, I love my studio space. And as I said, I do share it with my husband and the 2 boys, but it is built as a studio originally for me to work in and a space for the boys to study.
Yeah.
And we had a living space. And when my husband decided to go out on his own, he took over my cutting table and my work table. And I was horrified. And I just said, well, I'm getting my own table. And I took out the lounge suites and everything and totally turned it into a big studio space now. So I was able to get my wall, quilting wall, so I can hang all my quilts up that I work on. And it really turned it into a big working space. It's fantastic. I love it.
Yeah. And do you do most of your work on a domestic sewing machine, or do you have the sort of handy quilter as well?
I use a Bernina Q20.
Okay.
And I have a domestic machine as well. I use the Q20 the most. I love that. I love sitting down. I do love free motion quilting. Yeah. But me being in control, it's not on a frame. Yeah. I haven't gone there, but I just love it.
Yeah, I think that would be a good transition for me as well. If I ever do get into a bigger, throat machine, I'm so used to moving the quilt that it would be hard for me to switch over. But either way, I'm sure I'd have fun. Okay, so what is the best thing you do for your own self-care?
Best thing I do for my own self-care? Well, number one is create. I think creating is very good for you. But physically, I've taken up Pilates. I've started doing that for the last 6 months. And the amount of strength I've gained is fantastic. I absolutely love it. Yeah, good for your health, good for your balance. Yeah. Love my muscles. Yeah, I might not look like I have muscles, but I've got muscles.
Every once in a while, I see a Pilates setup on the buy-in sale, and I think, I've never tried it before, so maybe I'll have to give it a try.
It's really, I was amazed I get it. I get why, a lot of women do it. I get the exercise.
I do remember one time my husband came home from work, and he used to work out at lunch with the fellas. They'd go to the gym at lunch, and he said, it was Pilates this time. And I said, that sounds like yoga or relaxing. What is it? He's like, it was the hardest thing I've ever done. He said it was extremely difficult, and the next day he could barely move. So it was pretty funny. But he thinks it's wonderful. So I'll have to give it a try sometime. Okay, so we want to talk about the quilts. So we've already touched on the recovery quilt, which is such a heartwarming story of healing and recovery, and the collaboration with Irene Roderick. But tell us about some of your other quilts, like, let's see, Emotionally Whipped.
Okay, so emotionally whipped, actually, that was the quilt I painted and quilted after recovery.
Okay.
And I called it emotionally whipped, I guess, because you do feel like you've been emotionally whipped when you go through,
Yeah.
but at the same time, they sound, you're sort of talking about a serious topic in some ways, but they are uplifting quilts. It's not all doom and gloom. It's, yeah, just, we're all emotional. We all work through our emotions every day. There's ups and downs.
Yeah.
And it's just an exploration of that, really.
Hmm. And you mentioned the naughty corner quilt a little bit earlier, but what was the story behind that one?
There wasn't a big story behind that one. Now, the Naughty Corner quilt is actually, I had done a bit of a sketch with that one, with the river running through it.
Yeah.
And in fact, I never thought I was going to finish it. So I actually created another quilt called Red Rock River, very different, contrasty, but similar in the picture of it. It's got a river running through it.
Mm-hmm.
And simply because I thought that Naughty Corner quilt would never finish, and I really liked the design of it.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I finished both of them.
That's good. Well,
Yeah.
sometimes it just draws you back in and you have to make it complete, right?
Yeah, that's right. And with the emotionally whipped, that actually was part of the avant-garde Carrefour challenge,
Oh,
and it actually did win an award. It won the France Patchwork Award, which was so exciting because I was there.
Yeah, no kidding. Oh, that would be so great. So what happened when you were there? Like, did they say, by the way, you should probably come to the award ceremony?
Well, because everyone's there, so you want to go because you can meet all the other quilters, and they're just amazing. And so we did head over for that, and I did not expect to win an award, and it was awesome. So yeah, it was really nice. And then of course you get to meet others, and some who I'd met at Quilt National were there, and yeah, it's really nice to meet people from all around the world.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. Well, tell us about when you started animating some of the quilts. So what's Quilter's Workout?
Okay, Quilter's Workout is good fun. So Quilter's Workout is really, it is a workout. When you've got a big quilt and you've got it under your machine and you're wrangling it all around, even with the Q20, like, you're wrangling it around because it's so big.
Yeah.
And so I started thinking about a quilter's workout, and just me lying down, lifting my leg up and down, because so that's what I created. I created a figure like that. And yes, I did turn it into an animation to Olivia Newton-John's Let's Get Physical. And, has the leg moving up and down. And some people will look at that quilt, but they won't see the figure in it. They don't quite get how it works. Yeah. And then I'll walk up to them and I'll show them the animation, and they have a good laugh and they go, oh, I see, I get it. Yeah, it's fun.
So good. Okay, and you also did a quilt called You Get What You Get, and it's going to be, well, by the time this airs, it will have just been at QuiltCon 2026. So tell us about that one.
Yeah. Look, this is a simple quilt. It's in the minimalist category, and I'm so pleased it got chosen for QuiltCon. I just, again, you're never sure if these things are going to get in. But look, this one is, a little moment. It was just, from recovery. Your body's not the same as it used to be. And it was just from a conversation. And I started thinking about this. They do it a lot in kindergartens here. They say, you get what you get and you don't get upset.
Yeah.
So I thought it just sprung to mind when I was thinking of it. So it was a little misery moment of, just a moment, a fleeting moment that, I recorded on a quilt.
Yeah. Well, how exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing it at QuiltCon. And by the time this airs, I will have already seen it. But I'm only seeing a close-up shot of it and some of the pictures that you've sent me. But I'm seeing like almost like a face, part of a face-like figure. And it looks like there's those elements of the EKG or something like that in the face.
Yeah, that's
is that
right.
what that is? Oh,
yeah,
it's so cool.
Yeah.
So it does sort of scream some kind of medical aspect to it or some kind of element of healing, which is very cool.
Yeah.
Well, great. Okay, so you did the Blue series, and you mentioned to me earlier that you always loved Picasso's Blue period. So tell me about this series.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because I have always loved the Blue series, and I was just thinking about it before, and I was thinking, you know what? I've gone ahead and finished them all. So Picasso's Blue period, he did. There's one piece. It's called The Old Guitarist, and the guitarist is leaning over and playing the guitar.
Yeah.
And in 2020, I actually threw up my onto the wall, my fabrics, and had the wandering stitcher playing a guitar and, basically singing the blues because, we couldn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
And I kept it and I just put it aside and I just kept every now and again over the years, I've put it back up on the wall and it wasn't grabbing me. But last year, it did, and I finished it. And then I went ahead and I had these other pieces I'd painted. And in the end, because they had other colours on them, and in the end, I just put a blue wash over them.
Oh.
And that's why they're called Wash Away the Blues. And then just started quilting and hand stitching with them. And just, they've just come to life with the stitching and the hand stitching. Yeah. So just, it is a bit of a blue period. And I guess, it's not depressing. The pieces aren't depressing. I think they're quite uplifting actually, but it speaks to perhaps something subconsciously that, drew you in to finish them, which I find really interesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And one of those got into QuiltCon. So tell me about that one.
It got into that's right. Wash Away the Blues, the first one got into QuiltCon, which I was really surprised about. Like, I just put it in as a last minute. I hadn't actually considered putting it in QuiltCon, and then I got to the point where I don't really have anything. I'd been to France and I had this piece finished. I thought, well, I may as well try it, and so it did get in, and I'm pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. And I love all the elements are just like when you look at the hand stitch versus machine stitch versus paint versus everything that's going on, even the tiny little elements of hand stitch in the binding are so cool. So yeah, it's very, very cool. I really encourage you to go and look at it on the website if you're listening right now. I want to talk about a couple more of the awards in case we've missed a few. So you got the Jurors Award at Quilt National for 2025. Which quilt was that?
That one was called Will You Love Me When I'm Blue?
Oh, I love that one.
Yeah.
And the animation, that was so cute.
Yeah. So it's just about, finding your place.
Yeah.
And just, finding your place.
Yeah, so that one was so good. And let's see what else I have here. Best of Show, Sydney 2025. So that was Quilter's Workout?
Yeah.
Okay, and then Naughty Corner Quilt won the Master Award for Innovative Artistry in Houston 2024. We talked about the France Patchwork Award, Emotionally Whipped. And then you also mentioned that you've had a few other firsts locally and stuff like that as well. So do you have a whole bunch of other quilts on the horizon that you're dreaming about entering in different shows?
I always have quilts on the horizon. There's many.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got a few quilts. Some of them are older, some of them are newer. And I can't believe how many I've got on the go at the moment. But I am trying to get them all finished, even if I'm not in love with them yet.
Yeah.
Some of them I have fallen out of love with. But I can see they're just grabbing them and adding more to it now, and it's turning them around.
Yeah, and you've got some big things coming soon on the horizon. You're entering the SAQA South Australian Quilter. What is that?
Oh, no, it's a SAQA South Australia. It's a pod, and they're doing an exhibition as well.
Oh.
So at the moment, there's one that's travelling. It's called Between Black and White, which is the gradation, of all the colour wheel.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm part of that as well, which is really nice.
Fun. Okay, and we already mentioned you're teaching at AQC this April, and by the time this podcast airs, you will already have done the Australian Modern Quilt Show. You're the featured speaker there. That is a really big deal. So what are you doing there speaking and teaching?
Yeah, I am speaking and I am teaching. So I've got a couple of classes and they've sold out, which is really exciting.
Oh,
Yeah, it's pretty overwhelming, but you just go with it
yeah.
and do your best.
Yeah. Well, it certainly
Yeah.
feels really good when the classes sell out right away. That's a really good sign. People are wanting more for sure. Okay, so now it's time for the lightning round robin. It's a series of rapid fire questions and it's super fun. Okay, here we go. What is your favorite tool or notion?
Okay, I love my magnet, my big heavy magnet. It's a circle, the square magnet, and I'm really good at losing things, but I can throw my scissors, my needle that I'm using, my seam ripper, and my tweezers, and they all land on it, and they follow me around the house everywhere,
And they stay on that magnet. Okay.
and they stay on the magnet.
Yeah. How many UFOs do you have going on at once in the studio?
Ooh, I think I have got about 10 at the moment, which is a lot. I never used to have that many, but 10, yeah.
Okay. And do you have any kind of annual creative escape?
I do. I have been going on a retreat with my mother and her girlfriends and my girlfriends for, I think we're up to nearly 14 years or something like that. Yeah. So originally, some would scrapbook and some would knit and some would sew, but yeah, most of us sew these days. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's pretty sweet. And especially it's the people that you spend the time with, right?
Oh, we have a ball. It's great. Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything you'd still love to learn?
I am really interested in doing some sculptural work. So I'd love to get the textiles and move into a little bit more sculpture, I think.
That's kind of cool. Okay. Do you have any kind of personal reward system for getting things done?
I get to clean my studio afterwards when I finish a quilt.
That's a reward, getting to clean.
Yeah,
Cleaning
I have
for
to
me
get some order back because I'm so messy.
Cleaning for me is not the reward. The reward is getting to make more work after I've done the hard cleaning, but I hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, what motivates you to get out of bed in the morning?
Oh, I just think that quiet early morning joy of deciding what to work on that day. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Love it.
Have you had any weird, crazy, or funny fan moments?
Yes. In France, my sister came with me and we look very similar. We kind of look like twins. She's 4 years older, but, she looks exactly like me. And she helped me because there wasn't food near where I was exhibiting. And so she would have to go on this walk. So she'd head off, have a look at some of the exhibits, go and get the food and walk along this track back to the chapel. And anyway, she'd walk along there and these people would come up and go, oh, I love your quilts. I love, and they'd start talking about the quilts. So it was all so beautiful and generous there. And she'd be like, oh, no, it's not me. It's not me. And I'd say to her, just say thank you. Just say, oh, thanks.
Just pretend.
But it was hilarious. It was hilarious. She loved it. She thought it was so funny.
Yeah, so funny. She could have just let them have their moment and pretended she was you, but she was too honest. Okay, well, that was really fun. But one more question. Do you have any favorite collections of any kind in your home?
Look, my favorite collection really is my thread collection. I have a lot and I want more. You can never have enough, and you never have enough colors.
Yeah.
You never have enough colors in this particular weights you're wanting. It's endless.
Yeah. Oh, fun. Yeah, I think my thread collection is pretty endless as well. And there's some that I haven't even cracked open. I just don't have the time of day, but I can't wait to try it all. Yeah. Okay, so Tania, thank you for braving the lightning round robin. That was fun. So we've mentioned your website a couple of times. It's taniatanti.com.au because it's in Australia. And that's where we can find all the things we've talked about today. But where's the best place for us to connect with you on social media?
It's really on Instagram. I am on Facebook as well, but my Instagram account is probably the most active of them all. So it's at Tania Tanti Artist on Instagram.
Okay, that's easy to find. Now, as we wrap up, what do you want people to take away most from our conversation today?
oh, what do I want them to take away? Some lightness, some brightness. Yeah. And just to, break the rules and have a little bit of a play.
Yeah. Oh, what a great message to end with. And that lightness and brightness is exactly what your quilts bring to the table. So I love it. Tania, it's been such a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you for sharing your story with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. So that was my show with Tania Tanti. I loved this conversation with Tania. She brings such a fun and cool vibe to the quilting world with her work. Just hours before we recorded this podcast, she sent me a wiggle wiggle animation that just made my whole day. What really stands out to me is her fearless sense of play, the way she experiments, asks what if, and lets the work evolve without overthinking it. I'm especially drawn to how she uses bold color and texture to tell stories, sometimes serious, sometimes playful, and often with an uplifting sense of humor. That freedom to explore, to laugh, to try something new is such a great reminder to me and anyone looking to add a positive note to their day. And today, I loved sharing the story of Tania Tanti with you. Quilter on Fire is now on YouTube, and it's packed with brand new weekly content. What's waiting for you? Fun and easy tutorials to follow, exciting unboxings, exclusive interviews with top quilters and artists at the biggest quilt shows like Houston and QuiltCon. If you love Quilter on Fire on the podcast, you're going to be blown away by our YouTube channel. Don't miss out. Subscribe to Quilter on Fire on YouTube today. Let's ignite your passion for quilting. Thank you for listening to the Quilter on Fire podcast. Remember to rate, review, and follow us on Apple Podcasts. Your support helps me reach more quilters just like you, striving for that perfect quilty lifestyle. Click on those 5 stars and share what you loved most about today's episode. Don't forget to hit the follow button if you haven't already. With new episodes dropping weekly, you won't want to miss out on the inspiring stories and tips we have in store. Until next time, dream big and have fun in the studio with the Quilter on Fire.